Welcome, everybody, to Before the Commit, episode 34. Happy 1 year anniversary Before the Commit. Can you believe it? It's been a year. Feels like we just started. Crazy. So this episode, we're going to go through some of our YouTube shorts and kind of be like we were right or we were wrong, or just laugh at some of our thinking back then. And yeah, so we're going to start today with leading with some stuff about Grok 4.5. We're trying to figure out what to talk about. And there's certainly stuff always going on in the news, but the SpaceX IPO was, I guess, 3 weeks ago. And prior to that, we covered that, you had reported prior to the IPO that they had intended to acquire Cursor for 60 billion, or alternatively $10 billion just for the data or data rights agreement. Ultimately, they acquired them. It's crazy to think that $60 billion is just, we're just going to go acquire a company for $60 billion, likely for all that training data, probably for their customers. But yeah, so shortly after that, Grok 4.5 was released. I've been using it for some stuff, not really putting it through the paces too much. I should. But using Crow, you can set you can set a different agent harness for different types of activities. So, for example, you could do one for schedule jobs, one for your manager session, one for code reviews, and one for your general. And so I've been trying to conserve my tokens on Claude for actual coding work, and then kind of the more of the maintenance side of things, like code reviews and other things, non-coding, like non-primary coding sessions, using Grok 4.5, and honestly didn't notice a difference. I honestly don't pay attention too much to what Crow's doing, so to be fair, I didn't really have a way to measure it, but I didn't notice like a great degrading set of performance. What I will say is that I think Cursor, you should try Cursor out, because I find it doesn't require as much babysitting as Claude does. Like with some of I know you could switch to auto mode, and Crow now has the auto coding mode. I haven't used it, but yeah. So anyway, so yeah,
Well, I mean,
yeah, go
it's been
ahead.
a while since I've used Cursor. I used the OG version of Cursor all the way back when it was sort of first in the harness market. But once I moved on to Claude Code, and then at some point I evaluated Codex and things like that, I never really went back to Cursor. So I'll need to check it out again. Does it have a CLI that integrates well with Crow? I guess it does, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I actually added support for it. I mean, it doesn't support hooks as far as I know, not to the extent. I mean, I think that's one thing that Claude does, but it will eventually. I mean, I'm pretty sure it does. You know how Crow hooks, like the UI will signal when you need to review a permission or something like that. It's not so great in that respect, but I mean, everything else works fine. It does workspace handoff fine. uh, you know, Especially with the branched version of Crow that's web based.
Hmm.
Every The front end is completely decoupled from the sort of back end now. So yeah, I haven't found any issues. It works just fine. In fact, it works fine with either Codex or OpenCode as well. But yeah, the CLI works great. You just install, I think it's brew install Cursor, which is weird because it used to be a VS Code plugin or a VS Code fork or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like working in any of the other CLIs.
So I haven't got a chance to check out Grok 4.5. I let my subscription lapse some time ago, um, when Grok started falling behind, but they've really leaped, like all the way back from like third tier to probably like top of the second tier.
Hmm.
I don't know if you'd consider it first tier on the level of like 5.6 and Fable, but uh, it's definitely kind of Opus 4.8 quality. It seems like is the consensus on the web right now. Is it somewhere in the ballpark of that?
Hmm.
And I think it's like anywhere from 1/5 the price to 1/2 the price, depending on what category of pricing you fall into on Grok. I think that if you're less than 200K context, uh, it's like 5 times less expensive, and then it gets to like 2 times less expensive or something like that by the time you're above that. All in all, it's much less expensive, and for what I've heard, it's much faster. Did you have that experience?
Uh, I again haven't been paying much more attention to it. I probably should. I'm using it through a $20 Cursor subscription, which allows me to switch between different, because you can use Opus, you can use Grok 4.5. I was using Composer until Grok 4.5 came out. But no, I don't have like it's more anecdotal more than anything. And what I would say is like I didn't notice like a huge difference in my workflow and almost forgot that I'd been basically like using my $200 20x max subscription for things I really needed for. And then
Mm,
I use the $20 cursor account as like if I get close to I was getting close to hitting my quota, then I would now in Crow you could actually do agents handoff. So what was happening is in the middle of my coding session, say on like a Thursday, I would run out of credits and I would be like, all that context is now stuck inside Claude Code, and I now want to spin up a Grok session, and
mm,
now I need to like tell it about it. So now you could do that in Crow automatically. You just right click your session, and it's agent handoff, and you can hand off
mm.
to another agent harness. But yeah, honestly, didn't notice a difference. I mean,
That's cool.
like didn't notice more code reviews or more failed pipelines. And just to be fair, I don't think that the only model where I see significant difference now is with Fable 5. That's the only one where I see that it's doing an insane amount of work. But I also think Opus 4.8 got worse over time. So again, it's
Yeah.
all anecdotal. So
Yeah, it's hard to get a beat on, you know, even whether the models move or how they move after they're released. So like you get a point in time and then it sort of trends in one direction or another. Uh, but yeah, Grok is apparently it's free now. Is what
mm,
we were talking about. We saw a news item that it's free on. I think might only be on Grok build, maybe not in Cursor. I'm not sure.
it
We'll
is.
have to double check that. It's Cursor as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Well,
how
then
I'm using it.
more the reason for me to check it out then if it's free.
Well, I haven't tried to use because if you use Cursor without a subscription, you can use it free credits for a while. I haven't tried to cancel my subscription and use Grok 4.5, so I stand corrected. I'm using a paid account, so
Mm-hmm.
like I figure why if you could get like you know a bottle of water for $20 and a bottle of water for free, I'd rather pay $20 for a bottle of water.
That's true. Not the bottle of water thing.
Yeah,
Blanked. I think I
yeah,
blanked that part out, but I was saying it's true that Cursor has subscriptions. I forgot about that. So
yes,
so you're on the
yes. I have.
subscription, so you're not 100% sure whether it's free on Cursor or not. It's just because you're using the subscription. But I know
Correct.
it's free on Grok Build, which I guess doesn't have a subscription. Um,
Uh,
so
yeah, I haven't tried Grok Build out, and no support for Crow, but I mean, it could be added. Um, so yeah, no, that's it.
cool. Yeah, I'm gonna try that out probably realistically this weekend because I want to find a model that's cheaper um, for some projects I have on the side that are required to use API tokens.
Hmm. Cool. So yeah, this is our one anniversary episode. So I figured let's go through it. I don't know if I guess let me test one out and see if you could hear the audio. Um, can you hear this?
No.
Okay. So I'll have to take my headphones off. Okay. Let's see.
You can also see our V1 of AI clipping.
Tell me if you can hear now.
No. I think your noise cancellation's too good.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to put on hold on a second.
There's probably a checkbox within Riverside to get whatever you're sharing to have the audio flow through.
Yeah, I don't see it, but let me switch my audio settings to use my. Does it not let you change your audio the mid mid meeting? Hold on a second.
You may have the disconnect and reconnect. Let's see.
Here. You hear me? Okay.
Yeah, it's still fighting your noise cancellation. I can hear like every once in a while. Let me see
I
the.
see. I see the issue. Okay. There is a button.
Told you. I couldn't try it myself because it made me. It would. I'd have to steal the share from you.
Okay. And one of the issues that I hit early on in my sort of journey in coding was this idea of, thinking about things in terms of tokens or context and trying to, get as many tokens as possible into the LLM to get it to be aware of where things were. And I realized it's really good for writing prototypes and MVPs but not great once you get to a point where the LLM starts losing context of what's going on. And oftentimes it may not lend itself to, if you don't talk to it a particular way, it may not lend itself to good architectural structures. And then, you introduced me to Cursor, and I started to realize that there's more to it than just, it's like a human being. Like you don't necessarily have, um, you don't remember everything all at once. And one of the issues that I hit early on.
Wow, that's got to be a long time ago.
That's a year ago.
Yeah, I was like, when was the last time I was using Cursor?
But
Just
it's
talking about that.
interesting because I think, like, in that episode, we were really just first discovering the idea of, like, not throwing everything inside of ChatGPT and copying things in and out. Like, we had just discovered, and I think it was still kind of new, like, the idea that your IDE could, like, grep code when it needed to and, like, do these like this chain of thought type of coding, or using the IDE to like look at code that you only need to when you need to, rather than having the whole program. Think about how we were doing things like a year ago, a little bit more
Yeah,
than.
that's back then. I remember kind of the to set the stage. It was kind of like some people were trying to pack all their code base into a minified package that then they could put into a large context uh, chat bot on the web. And there was a little bit of a race to go towards large context windows back then, and then they realized that actually it's complete crap if it can't get the context out of it properly. Which is funny because that's why I was a little bit skeptical when they recently have started to go back in the direction of like 1 million, 2 million contexts. It's like, oh yeah, I remember 1 million contexts a year or longer ago.
Yeah. So Cloudflare The idea is that you become the architect.
Let's see. Let's find one. All right.
I have some ocean.
The idea is that
How do you get back to?
And it's kind of getting you more and more comfortable with the idea of delegating a task and then looking at the results later, like you would if you were managing a team of engineers. So I think that in the medium term, it goes towards like almost like engineers become more of a product manager, or maybe they're like a product manager of a feature or a set of features, and they own that feature, and then they delegate tasks like bug fixes and, hey, let's evolve the architecture or refactor this way or that way. So I think I think things become much more planning upfront, and then creating the necessary context in order for your delegation to be successful. And
What do you think? Do you still think the same way?
I mean, in many ways, I do, like in the sense of delegation, even more so maybe than back then. But, the planning up front, I guess there's more nuance to that. Like, how much do you plan up front before you start? What are the expectations that, like, at what point do you approach the diminishing returns of planning? Um, and then what does it look like when you either try to approach the diminishing returns of planning, you still have something that makes it out the other end that's not correct. So you still need an iterative agile process to some extent. And then the other side, the flip side is that you do the minimum viable plan and then hyper iterate, or maybe not the minimal viable plan, but you do whatever you know at the moment, and then you hyper iterate. I think probably what we find ourselves doing more of over time versus back then is we're a lot less waterfallish in terms of planning and much more agile. But I do still agree with the idea that you need to plan to some extent before you start a process. There is, context collection. I don't know if I can even call it planning anymore. It's more like context collection in order to make sure that you can move forward with some high percentage of success.
Yeah, I think again at the time we were the harnesses were not constructed the same way, so you kind of thought of things as you need to one shot it almost and get it right the first time and avoid iteration and that was just our limited viewpoint on like what we could see these becoming.
Well, maybe not at the time of saying that, but back in the beginning, you almost had to one shot it. Otherwise, you're completely screwed because the more turns you do in a coding process in the original AI,
Yeah.
the more quickly your code base went to crap.
Yeah.
Whereas now,
You don't have to worry about that.
now you don't have to really worry about that anymore. I mean, Opus isn't going to turn your code base to crap without you having to make some effort at getting it to do it.
Yeah.
And for those not, I know, for me, Cursor is what I kind of live and breathe in. And for those not familiar, Cursor is essentially a customized version of VS Code, with some niceness and syntactic sugar that Cursor kind of hides under the hood. Cursor Agents is
Man, I look like I was getting a lot of sleep back then. This was really before you could go on long coding tears like the dopamine hits that I get now from the AI coding sessions. I looked so just like well rested and no stress.
You were just an innocent young boy back
Yeah,
then.
Like the
yeah.
next sort of, I think, thing in a maturity model that you would, tabbing and then, autocomplete and then, chatting with an agent and then maybe background agents is sort of the next thing. I know.
Oh, it's so funny.
Background agents are the next
A
thing.
green
Yeah.
10 bullet.
I mean, back then the background agents was like one of the episodes that we talked about. It was like a whole
Yeah,
it was a whole thing.
it dates us.
Yeah. All right. Let's let's sort by let's see, oldest. Let's see, what could we talk about? Let's see.
Like, I
Yeah.
think that things will have to move in the direction of like these theories that have been in engineering for a while, where folks are building towards the test, and they know they're done when the test is that might be how things start moving, because you need to have a clear acceptance criteria for these things. It's not enough that you can just say, oh, the lead and the engineer will sit down and talk about it for 15 seconds. We'll figure it out. We don't need to have an acceptance criteria written for this. You're going to need clear data-driven acceptance criteria for you to unlock this productivity that'll come with these tools in the future. Like, I think.
Yep. I think that that's definitely still true. um, except for a lot more of what was theory back then is in practice now. I think back then you would probably, and I think I had said it many times, that you still need a human in the loop in reviews and things like that. I don't really feel that way anymore. I think that there's, the development cycle, the development process used to have really hard walls, and you know there would be stringent criteria and multiple people that are responsible and accountable in order to make it through certain walls to get on the road to production. Um, and humans would look at your lines of code, etc. Um, I don't think and obviously in the beginning of engineering, or the beginning of AI coding, you replicated that process and tried to automate the pieces you could. But you didn't have a lot of trust for AI at first because A, it sucked, and B, it was new. Um, Now it's gotten a lot better. Now it's incredibly intelligent at coding, with certain tendencies that you can mitigate. And I think the model that I envision in my head, if back then I was looking ahead. If I were to look ahead now, I would call the process, and it's not really looking too far ahead because we have a lot of this process ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear that the process to me is much more like filtering water with multiple degrees of materials that get finer and finer and finer down the tube. So you're kind of passing the code through, internal dialogue, and then an external AI review, and then, a sequence of repeating nets once it's in different environments. So it's like a sieve, or whatever you want to call it, or one of those crude filters of water where you're putting in layers of material that get finer and finer over time. I think that the development process has gotten wider, I think, because the planning stage and the acceptance criteria stage not only need to be beefier, but also need to extend further to the left and further to the right. Like it used to be that if me and you were on a telephone call talking about something, I wouldn't consider that to be the extreme left of the development process. I would consider the extreme left to be like, I wrote an epic, right? But now I feel like your telephone conversations in meetings and things like that is the real true left of the planning stage. Even other things like maybe even your notes or your conversations you're having with AI personally before you have those meetings is all the way to the left.
Yeah.
Perhaps your entire career is the left of the development process, the start of it, of the left. If you've built up a lifetime of experience and context. And then to the right, I think that the traditional acceptance criteria flows much further to the right, like through multiple environments, perhaps that are like different stages of quality before you get to, kind of like a like when they say you're triple distilling your whiskey, like there might be multiple distillation processes that happen after the PR for it to get to the point that it is, quote unquote, perfect for production, and that might mean, no compliance issues, no security issues, no bugs, no logic, no, security bugs, no logic bugs, etc. So yeah, I see it. I see the process has gotten wider, not to say that the process will take longer. The process will be much faster, but I think the process will be longer if you were to measure it in length in terms of distance on a flow chart, maybe.
Yeah. The aperture is wider, meaning that more people can participate, and there isn't like it's like I think of it kind of like how Docker changed the way software engineers were able to get involved in the systems engineering, or not systems engineering, the deployment process and infrastructure, things like AWS APIs and then Terraform, where you open the aperture of what a skill set can participate in. So software engineer could be an infrastructure engineer, and then you have DevSecOps, which is like, okay, now we need pipelines. It created a whole new job essentially, and so now you have the same thing. It's like a product manager can maybe not engineer a distributed system because they don't understand necessarily how to architect things, but they can participate in building out a prototype, distributing work out, like figuring out like, and like to your point, like even people who are not product managers, customers can then, not without them even realizing, could be participate in the software development process, where like the context, as you said, of a meeting or an email that they send in is actually fed into the software development lifecycle.
Everyone's got some context to contribute, regardless of whether you're a software engineer or not. You have some piece of context of the full equation that you can contribute, even if it's just reaffirming something that's your own experience that it already knows. That is important context. So I think that it's like you're pushing something heavy up a hill, but there only were like one or two very special and complicated to use handholds, and the engineers would be pushing the rock up the hill, and everyone else is kind of in a support role by writing up PowerPoint documents or plans, etc. But now I think that everyone can help push the load up the hill in their own way. Like maybe they're not architecting something that's deep in on the software engineering side, but they might be, you know, changing a page to be more friendly in terms of copy. You know, it could be adding feedback in, or you found the bug and now finally you can make a ticket that actually has a chance of being worked on, because you don't need to go through a game of telephone to figure out how to describe it to an engineer so they get it, you know. So I think that everyone has context to contribute, and I think that the AI becomes the universal adapter of like, contribute your context and I'll figure out how to push the rock with it, you know. And you don't necessarily have to understand how to code in order to get some degree of, you know. So I think that at some point in the future, companies are, you know, just a number of employees all contributing to all areas of the application at once. And when they focus on one area or the other, it has more to do with you know, like just like you'd maneuver an army on the battlefield.
So this one is interesting. I haven't seen it, but I know it was the episode where it was like episode 3 or 4 where the tool of the week was Claude Code. So you hadn't used Claude Code, you were just using Cursor. So this is you for the first time using Claude Code and using a CLI-based coding agent.
I think that you're going to have increased productivity, and I think you're going to have some rollover in perhaps. I think that you're going to have increased.
So this,
That's not it.
and you're kind of
So
that.
like, I think that things will have to.
Wait a second. Why did that work?
I think that you're going to have increased productivity, and I think you're going to have.
I think YouTube has a bug.
Click on the picture and not on the words, because maybe the words are below the one you're supposed to click on instead of above it.
Click on the words.
Yeah, I guess.
I think that you're going to have. I think.
No, it flips really. Oh, it must be one of those clips that are only like a second long for some reason. Because we.
Yeah, let me.
As you can see, we are media publishing.
I find Claude Code to be, by the way, in my opinion, superior to Cursor in how it leverages Claude and its tool calling and things like that. So, which makes sense because it's like a vertical, you know, it's Claude made their own IDE or their own coding agent in this case. So they're obviously leveraging it probably better than anybody else could. They might even have, you know, some secret sauce in how they're leveraging it that others don't even know. But anyway, I find it to be very, very good at what it does. I find Claude Code to be, by the way.
Yeah, that was it. But yeah,
I mean, I think that's still true. I mean, the reason why Claude Code is great is because it leverages the tools well. You know, it's got a whole bunch of features that were added, most of which are not useful, but then a few of them have been very useful, like skills have been amazing. You know, sub agents have been pretty useful.
Let's watch another one.
So the concept of going to Google.
Yeah, there's some weird bug with this. I have to reload every time. It's like not.
You know,
and one of the issues that
Ah, man, this is great. All right, let's try this.
You know, in this market where there's a lot of no code and low code and everyone who's not an engineer is getting into it, like Claude Code is the real engineering tool. They've done the work to like make it available to engineers. So you could literally build your own Cursor on top of Claude Code if you wanted to. So anyway, that's a huge, huge point for like automation, pipelining, and all the folks who want to do some you know, use it as part of your platform. You know, in this market.
There was one more. maybe not. Yeah.
So after that, I mean, Claude became sort of the number one or the only for many people. Um, and then I think the story after that, up until now, is they've slowly been caught up to by the other players in the market. I think at first they got ahead because everyone else was focused on on other use cases and didn't realize that the coding use case was probably the most important one. Um, then once they realized that that's very important, they all started turning their attention to it and they caught up fairly quickly. The models have improved a lot and gotten much better at coding. Um, I guess the story is that Anthropic hasn't really been able to keep an order of magnitude ahead of their competition in that regard. They're only maybe incrementally better. They're not even a generation better at this point. Um, so yeah, I mean, all that's going to be great for the consumer. It might not be great for Anthropic investors. They would have preferred to just win outright, but it's going to be great for consumers. And in the long run, it will probably be great for all companies because they'll have to innovate instead of just stagnating because they're too far ahead.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, certainly it's good for the consumer because they'll get cheaper tokens if there's a lot more competition. And it seems like, I may go as far as to say that I think that it's going to be incredibly difficult for someone to get an order of magnitude ahead again because it's just so easy to use AI to follow behind quickly. Like you have almost like a near unlimited ability to work with AI if you really kind of dial it in and scale it horizontally.
Yeah. So these are popular videos. This is the one video that's gotten the most amount of views on YouTube.
But one thing that's interesting is when they asked the folks at Starlink whether they would ever have faster, lower latency speeds on Starlink than they would from, would you ever compete in the cities? What I think was the question. And Starlink was basically like, no, we're not going to compete in the cities because the latency of going to a satellite for your internet is obviously going to be higher than a direct wire going to a substation, a handful of blocks away in the city. However, that all flips on its head when you talk about data centers in the sky, because think about it. When you use an LLM, you're going all the way through the internet to the LLM. The LLM's then making all the way back. You're going through how many different jumps.
Well, I have.
But one thing that
Yeah, that video got 2,100 views on LinkedIn. I mean, YouTube. But yeah, I mean, who would have thought?
I wonder why it got so many views. I don't know if it's people who like SpaceX or people who don't like SpaceX. I guess why it got so many views is you could take it either as positive or negative for the company. So you had I got both, but we got both audiences, all 2,000.
Well, if you look at the things that get the most amount of views, they're controversial topics. Like Elon Musk sues Sam Altman. OpenClaw was real popular. Anthropic lawsuit. Disruption. SpaceX silence before big move. Lawsuit. Risky road. People.
It's probably pretty telling for the audience that this is the first time that it's really kind of that we're looking at this data. Like we don't actually sit down and say, oh, let's make more videos like the one that had the most views. But it's kind of telling like why social media is the way it is. Because if we were to make more videos like the ones that get more reviews, we would have to increasingly like focus on more controversial topics like Sam Altman versus Elon Musk or SpaceX or Tesla, or we'd have to focus in on the lightning rod
Yeah.
and draw attention, which we're gonna do from time to time because we want to talk about everything, but we mostly just do the podcast to talk about what we want to talk about, and we kind of forget that there's anyone listening. But
yeah, I mean, largely, like, I don't, I know for a fact that we would not have gotten as far as we have and as quickly as we have if it weren't for the podcast. So that being said, like, it forces us to, like, for example, like, would we have found Claude Code as quickly as if we weren't like, okay, this week I'm going to focus on Claude Code. This week we're going to look at AI gateways, whatever have you. We're going to talk about this story that forced us to explore, like, a topic like, AI might be used in the future to make movies. Like, why else would we look at that? Like,
yeah, it's good for like breadth, deep research, as opposed to like, going down a rabbit hole, which I always do. But the problem is that I got to go down a new rabbit hole every podcast, which is helpful because it forces you out of your comfort zone a little bit. It's also therapeutic in the sense that it's like, it's almost like a form of mindfulness, and just to be talking about random topics that are outside of what you might be in the weeds on at any given day.
yeah.
Yeah.
So here's an actual let's do this one.
One thing I've realized from browsing LinkedIn for a while and seeing a lot of the cope is that there's a lot of people out there with the title of software engineer who aren't software engineers. They're coders or programmers.
Yes.
And they are really upset and deathly afraid that someone is going to take their identity away from them. And I would say that I think coding is dead. It is going to die very soon. Well, one thing I've realized from
what's funny is that when I said those things back then, and there's a few other things that I stumbled upon accidentally that hit like a lightning rod. You get so many people who get upset, and then what's funny is they don't come back and say, "Oh, I was wrong." Like,
I remember I want like somebody on an old, like, maybe you're posting a lot on LinkedIn back then, and like they want somebody to come back and be like, you were right.
Yeah, like and sometimes you have to remember that. I'm not trying to say like, oh, I get things right all the time.
Yeah.
But when you do get something right ahead of everybody else, one of the reasons why you're onto something is because everyone comes out of the woodwork to tell you're wrong. Or gets really upset about it one way or the other.
No, they're either that or they're afraid that you're right. They're not sure, but whatever you're saying means something to their future, to them personally. Or like an academic who spent years studying something and then you were able to figure it out in 5 minutes. That's threatening to them.
I guess. I think on that particular topic, it wasn't necessarily that people disagree with me. I think it's that a lot of people feel threatened by the idea that you're not going to be coding anymore. I mean,
yeah.
By the way, we don't have a guy that lives in the elevator whose job it is to figure out how to get the elevator to your floor. We don't have an operator. When you pick up the phone, you go ask the operator to go connect you to a person by name. And they look it up in the phone book or whatever. We don't have God, what else? There's so many jobs.
Well, I think there's probably very few people, like the percentage of people who write code now today than did a year ago is significantly less. And the number will continue to shrink. Does it mean that a coder can't become somebody that knows how to use a coding tool like Claude Code or Cursor? No, it doesn't. It just means that you have to accept the fate of reality that like you're not going to go in the elevator and pull it up by a rope anymore. That you might go in the elevator and greet people, or you might tell people where the elevator is. But you know.
That's not what they were doing, were they? That's terrifying if that's what they were doing.
Come on now! Come on!
I think they were just the only. I think they were the only. You know, like they needed someone there because they needed to make sure the doors closed properly, and I hope so. They weren't carrying the whole
Can
thing.
you give me a hand? Got some blisters this week. Can you give me a hand?
Oh man,
some gloves over there.
That's terrible. I remember the other one. Like there used to be a job, right? They were called upper deckers or something like that, or waker uppers, or and they used to you pay them, and they would stand outside your house in the morning and like use a straw and shoot like pebbles or peas, dried, frozen peas at your window to wake you up in the morning.
Frozen peas?
Yeah, I can't remember what it was called. They were like, look it up. There's people used to pay them, and they used to come to your address in the morning when you're supposed to wake up and basically like throw rocks at your window.
Yeah.
I think they use like straws.
Knocker up.
Knocker uppers. Right? Like.
Yeah, so the elevator operators used to press and hold a button. Pin boys, which were workers in bowling alleys who manually reset bowling pins. And lamplighters, people who extinguished and lit and refueled city gas lamps every day.
Now remember, when these jobs or these tasks, which is probably more analogous to coding, go away, it doesn't mean that like all these people, just disappear off the earth. No, they go into different jobs, and those jobs get paid a lot more on average. If you look at the progression, as productivity goes up, now you don't need to light the lamps and put out the lamps and light them, when they were fire.
Shoot peas.
Yeah, or shoot peas at a window because now you have an alarm clock. But the amount of money that you can make working in an alarm clock business, which is what wakes people up now, is far more than you could back then shooting peas at someone.
Wait, do people still buy alarm clocks?
Well, you know what I'm saying. Whatever the equivalent of that is in the market throughout the years.
Put out by the cell phone market.
Yeah, and the people working on cell phones are making way more than the people who are working on alarm clocks.
Well, don't you think that some people? Well, maybe I'm wrong here, but I think the people who are the most fearful are those that are worried that they won't be able to find a job doing something else. And like, I do think it is true that some people spent a lifetime doing one particular thing and may not have skills that, like writing software may not be a skill that transfers to like something else. I don't know. I can't think of a parallel, but I do think that anytime anything like this happens, like even people who are cashiers, right? Your whole life you were a cashier, and now they replaced you with self-checkout. So, okay, some people have to stand by the self-checkout and teach people how to use it, like some people who've never used it before. But you don't need one person for every self-checkout. You might need one or two. So then you have a bunch of people that only know how to be a cashier that now have to find a job. where do they go? What do they do? They have to learn a new skill, go back to school. Like, so I do think it does have an impact, and I do think that's where it stems from. It's a fear-based reaction that this thing and the thing is that there are people that have been writing software. I mean, I've been writing software for 30 years, and
but there's two tracks. There's two tracks in every job, right? Like, it doesn't matter what job you're in, there's two tracks, right? There's one where you can figure out like a reoccurring skill that you do over and over and over again, right? And then you just do that every day until it's time to leave, and then you leave, right? And then there's people who, you know, expand into other aspects of the business, right? Like there's a difference between a cashier that remains as a cashier their entire time and their entire experience of working for a supermarket for 10 years is that they scan things, you know, a repeatable process, as opposed to like becoming the front end manager and now having to like understand how to manage the people and when they should be on their registers versus when they should start cleanup at the end of the night, or when you need to count all the kills, or when you need to, you know, call for this or that, you know, all the other things that a front end manager needs to do. Right. And then from a front end manager, maybe you could become a bookkeeper where you start to count, or you could be the produce manager. And now you're there stocking the shelves in the produce section, making sure that the vehicles come in. Like, the people who are doing the former, where they're just doing a repeatable task over and over and over again, those people are going to have a harder time. There'll be other jobs if your job is automated, but you'll have a harder time because you'll have to learn a whole new task. I'm sure there's something that you could take away from the previous job, but like, that's not new with AI, right?
No,
that's
of course not.
If you look at the whole progression of human history, it's about eliminating those jobs, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what the pea shooter was not eliminated by AI. It was eliminated by, you know, probably something even before the microchip, I'm sure, replaced the pea shooter.
Well, yeah, I mean, like people who used to drive horse-drawn carriages, like, where are they?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
They're driving taxi cabs now.
Now, the other type of person who expands themselves sort of broadly across the organization, learns the whole business up and down, like, those people become very valuable inside of the AI economy because they know the workflows. They understand more than just their little, I put this sticker on this package. They understand why you put the stickers on the package, what the stickers do at a higher level, why the stickers are tracked, and, you know, how they end up in the spreadsheets, or what the next segment in the workflow is. Those people are going to be more important because in the beginning they're going to be the only ones who can tell whether the AI is doing a good job at its incremental pieces. They're going to be the ones who are designing the, you know, new aged assembly line. And then ultimately, you know, those jobs maybe even get automated away. And then there's a higher level of, you know, running an entire business by yourself because you understand the unit economics and you understand this. You know, it's just a natural progression of what's been going on throughout. It's just sped up now. It's sped up.
Yeah, and there'll be more after it too.
Yeah, I mean,
if there's robots that can take on more manual labor tasks than humans do, and, you know, there'll be a whole wave of things that are, you know, taken away from humans, and there'll have to be new jobs for that. And so, yeah.
Eventually we'll just all be influencers.
I mean, or just not work at all and just enjoy life. Yeah, this guy said 4 months ago, "This is absolutely insane and dumb thing. Coding is not going to die anytime soon. Even the most enthusiastic AI bros aren't going that far. The Windows 7 vibe coding situation alone demonstrates that." I mean, I think at the time there was still, a mindset that like no one's ever going to seriously use AI coding. And I think Claude Code changed all of that. I think that within the last 6 months, people are reevaluating. You almost don't even hear people say vibe coding anymore. It's almost not even mentioned. It's almost like that was what you called it when, you know, people were producing slop, and you can still do that. It's a lot harder to write bad code. It really is, and it's only going to get better.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's astonishing to me that someone wrote that 4 months ago. I thought it was obvious. I thought you'd have to go back a year for it not to be obvious.
Okay, I'm going to
But
say, what do you think now? Little rage bait.
about them apples. Yeah, I think it's pretty common now if you're working at or with companies that are experienced in AI. It's pretty common to have engineers that have been coding for like the last 25, 30 years who haven't coded in like 6 months. Pretty common.
I can't even tell you the last time I like opened an IDE and like looked at a line of code. Like it's almost like too much work to do that. Let's see, what else? Man, the things that, yeah, I'm trying to find something that's not, let's see, yeah, that was a good one. Let's see, what was this one about?
And, Anthropic, if you're not aware, is the company that puts out the Claude models, Opus and Sonnet and Haiku, basically saying that more powerful AI will arrive by 2027, and clusters could run millions of AI instances at superhuman speed. 50% of entry-level white-collar jobs could be displaced in 1 to 5 years, creating a crisis of meaning. Calls AI the single most serious national security threat in a century, describes it as a country of geniuses in a data center. Internal testing on Claude 4 Opus showed alignment faking, AI appearing to follow safety protocols during monitoring, but exhibiting deceptive behaviors when oversight was absent. And
This guy said Anthropic couldn't even get an agent to run a successful vending machine.
This guy's got his own Turing test.
Yeah.
He's like, I won't believe it until someone makes a vending machine.
It's ruining our planet for less than mediocrity. I mean, I think this was around the time where they came out, and I guess this is like, when they were, what was the mythos like stuff? They were kind of hyping it, and this is what caused all of the export controls to be applied.
Well, I
National.
think this is 5 months ago. So this is like just us commenting on like the latest out of Anthropic. Like this is back when they got egg on their face by saying that coding was going to be over in 6 months. Meanwhile, on their website, as they're saying coding is going to be over in 6 months, or software specifically, he said software engineering is going to be over in 6 months. They're hiring software engineers, right? With a cliff on the equity. So I don't know what was in their head, whether they actually believe that or not, but anybody with any sort of experience in software engineering knew that to be just comical at the time he was saying it.
Yeah.
Even given how awesome AI is, and even given I agree that it's true eventually, if and I think it has to do with Dario and others. They're AI researchers. I don't think their background is software engineering. And my experience, no offense, don't write me hate mail, but my experience is that the AI researchers slash data scientists have, on average, an overly high opinion of their ability to do software engineering, or maybe a better way of saying it is they don't know everything that a software engineer does. They just think of it as coding.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, coding is certainly solved, in my opinion, to the large extent. But software engineer is much more deep than coding, which is part of the reason why I was so confused by all the hate from software engineers about AI coding. It was like, don't you want to get rid of that aspect of the job? That is like the least fun part of the job, in my opinion. I mean, everyone loves to work on a problem and eventually solve it, but nobody likes to spend days hitting your head on the wall trying to figure out why this code you wrote won't work, and then seemingly in some stroke of miracle you just figure it out all at once and it ends up being something stupid. Nobody likes that.
Yeah.
Nobody likes that. That hasn't happened to me once since AI came out. To me, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think the idea that by 2027 there'll be some amazing model, I think there's truth to that, but I also think that that's their take on it, and that there are incrementally better models coming out that, do more amazing things. I don't think that's going to stop. I don't think the evolution of AI is going to necessarily hit a wall, because like what happens in 2028? Are those models not really powerful also? Or like the tooling associated with it, or different types of AI that works in companion with LLMs. Like maybe it's not just LLMs that we've been talking about for the last year and a half, 2 years, but other types of AI capability that's beyond that works in concert with, that makes these things run even greater or cheaper, or so. And I do agree with that. In 1 to 5 years, a lot of the white collar jobs will be replaced. But like you said, I think new jobs will get created, new types of jobs. So
I don't know if they're necessarily going to be replaced, because I don't think there's going to be like this. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think there's going to be like this moment where like a commercial off the shelf product just comes out and leaps everyone into replacement. I think
yeah,
it's going to be more like uh, AI tightens the loop of progress and gives us a whole new capability of like intelligence that's not in someone's head. It's actually sitting here on a server. Uh, and it'll be a process to get those new resources aligned with getting work done in a variety of different white collar jobs. And I think that the people who are doing the job will transition from a co-worker of that thing to a monitor of that thing to an orchestrator of that thing. And I think that like that happens over the course of years. I don't think that's going to happen all at once. But I could be wrong. I mean, maybe someone builds a thing that accelerates through that learning process on every industry all at once. Who knows?
I think a good example is like a UI, a person who designed, like a graphic designer, like that designs your website. Like
Mhm.
now that's like very trivial to do. Maybe you still need somebody to oversee it, but companies that would typically go and contract somebody out because it was the only way that you could really accomplish it, you now can do pretty easily with, you know, a well-crafted prompt, and some guidance. So again, I don't think it's a revolutionary thing. I think it's an evolutionary thing. And I do believe that there are certain jobs that are not as in much demand, and that those people are, forced to evolve into something else, right? Or find a different thing to go work on. So I do, and again, I think you're right. What you said earlier, I think that, pea shooters go and do something else, and it's just like human history. I don't think that Dario Amodi is saying anything other than what happens whenever there's like a groundbreaking, like when the internet came out, and people started shopping online, going to stores left, and now you see malls closing. Some of the malls are turning into housing. There's more malls that are more experience based, right? Where you go in and you may not buy anything, but you're experiencing things. So, people still go to Apple stores to touch and see things and devices. They might still go home and buy it online, but they still go physically into a store to see the device, to touch it, to see how it works, to ask questions. So yeah. So I mean,
I mean,
I,
I
yeah,
don't disagree with the prediction.
yeah,
I just laugh at it because of the timeline mostly. But then also, I feel like Anthropic talks out of both sides of their mouth on
yeah,
this issue all the time.
yeah.
It's like, on the one hand, they're exaggerating the awesomeness of it. And then on the other hand, they're exaggerating the fear around it, which seemed counterproductive, but I think,
Well, I think it has to do with
leads into their
culture.
own.
I think it's a cultural decision, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's right, but I think it's part of a larger marketing vision and mission, and it may not be the right one, but aligning yourself to being, and I mean, think back to like when they told the US government that they don't want it for fully autonomous weapon systems. Like that was a cultural choice that they made that may have hurt them, um, versus just saying nothing. So, like, by aligning yourself with being morally correct, you might look at demographics and say, we're going to win a share of the market based off of saying these things, versus like other companies that have the exact same technology that aren't being morally conscious in say another way.
To me,
So
there's just too many
it could be stupidity
conflicting.
also.
To me, there's just too many contradictions,
Yeah.
right? Like, only we are ethical and moral enough to control this AI. But at the same time, I'm going to exaggerate and lie to you about how great it is and how fearful it is. So which one is it? Can I trust you because you're the most morally capable person of controlling this AI? If so, then why has everything you've told me up until this point been like rose-colored glasses or a horror movie when the reality is somewhere in the middle? And you know, and honestly, I think if Anthropic had their way, then people like you or me who are outside of that bubble would not be able to work on AI at all, and only they would. Um, which to me, I think is a recipe for losing against another competitor outside of the country.
And I think that um, because you're going to want to map the network, you're going to want to.
That's not what I wanted to do.
And I think that it's never been easier than today to do things, but that just brings other challenges. Now it's not about can I build this in enough time. It's now, am I building the right thing? Am I thinking far enough in the future about what's coming that I'm not just wiped away by what's next? And I
Yeah.
I think it's less important now because I don't know how old this is. Um, I think it's less important. I think it was a fear before where you would be very wary about what you were building. but it's super easy to pivot. I mean, yeah, of course, if you're starting a business, if you build the wrong thing and somebody comes along and like does something similar and wins a bunch of market share, then yeah, I mean, you might be screwed, but you just go build something else.
Well, I think the sentiment I had back then was not that you'll make a mistake and build the wrong thing. It was that you can build things so fast that you get to the end of your thinking, and then you have to, like, the bottleneck is like your own ideas or your own experience, right? You might end up building features into an application over and over and over again without marrying it to the market. So you're much more likely to not engage with the market as early as you might, you know what I mean? Like, usually if you worked on a prototype for 6 months and then launched it to the market, people would be like, oh wow, that's very lean. But now you're doing like a year and a half of work in a couple of weeks, and you're like, you're in your head, you're maybe still working on it for 6 months before you put it in the market. But by then it's like this massive application with so many features and so many things that like the user is like, wait a second, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of the major products that have launched very basic. Like, the original Google images like didn't even have like the ability to sort it, right? It was just you search for an image and the images came up. It was literally like list images. That was it. The original Facebook was so basic. Like, if you could go back in time to the day Facebook launched and you plop down the source code from today, I guarantee you everyone come in and be like, oh wow, this is too complicated. Why do I need all this? Right? How do I use this thing? You'd need to have a college course on how to use Facebook. Whereas like nobody needs a college course on how to use some of these applications because they've gone through the experience of using the product from the beginning, and every feature that was added seemed at the right time for them because they had encountered the problem that the feature solves, as opposed to like getting dropped in something that solves everything for you, but you've got to know why you got to use these buttons, etc.
Yeah.
So I think that I guess I'm on a tangent a little bit from that, but I think what I was trying to say back then is that you run out of things to build, right? If you're not going on some journey to just build like a massive application forever, you eventually should get to a point where you run out of things to build because you don't have enough information from the market. So the bottleneck at this point is engaging with the market and learning more about how off track you are in product market fit.
Yeah, exactly.
Where in the past, like, you probably had like so much feedback from clients and a backlog that's so long that you have to prioritize which clients or which potential clients are more important than these ones. And then you got to do a backlog, and we need to hit it by Q2 because that's when their budget comes through. And, I feel like a lot of those concerns where the development is the long piece and what you want to do in the backlog of things to work on was far longer. You never get to it all. I think it's been reversed. I think now you can drain the entire backlog of everything you want to do, if you're not also ramping up the feedback loops, the folks on the product side. So I don't think that those positions are going to disappear because of AI. I think that if anything, there's going to be more of those positions because you're going to need to feed this beast that just wipes out new features overnight.
You know what's missing? I just had a thought. Like all these amazing AI coding tools, all they've done is taken the engineering process and made it so simple that you don't have to worry about the coding part. But the part where it hasn't addressed is how do I take my product and test it against a market? Like there needs to be like that area of like from idea to monetization, or to let's say you're not monetizing. Let's say from idea to mission, right? how do you get your application into the hands of a user? That part of the whole software development lifecycle and getting customer feedback is it's not fully integrated. And like, still as a builder, somebody that's has an idea, you're still like left to kind of fend for yourself. There's so much noise and so many ways in which to get somebody interested. Like, there's got to be an evolutionary change here where, you know, somebody has something that can solve somebody's problem, and they can be made aware of it, and get it to that person, and get feedback about it, and incorporate that into the software development lifecycle.
I think there's some standards that are missing. I think some of them may be like there's options now for standards, but they haven't been completely adopted. I think MCP is probably one of those standards that's been the most adopted. But like, there's still a lot of like humans have to do this in a development cycle. You know, whether it be like for instance, if you want to use like if you want to put in place like some form of metrics or open telemetry, you're still going to need to set up like, you know, whatever it is, you know, your APM solution, like New Relic, you might have to set up, or you might have to set up like Grafana, or you might have to set up Post Hog or something like that. And you inevitably get to the part where the AI is like, okay, you're going to have to go do that for me. And I think that in the future, and it will take some time to get there, in order for you to be part of this new development stack, to be part of that as a subsystem, your service or your product is going to have to be available to an agent to do beginning to end, like the sign up, everything.
Well,
right?
I'm thinking even further than this. I'm thinking like, why are like this like way of selling requires you to do like cold calling and like get on an airplane and shake someone's hand and know somebody that knows somebody. And to me, there's got to be a better way for somebody. Yeah, I get the whole deployment to production and metering. I'm talking about actually turning, like, there's somebody out in a nonprofit organization that needs the tool. They don't know it exists. And now, how do the dots connect between my great widget and getting it to that person? And how do they find me? And like, why does it have to be this specialized person that can only like wave their magic wand and make it happen? Like, there's got to be a better way of. I know there's certain companies that have, like, you know, Base 44, they'll market your app for you. It's a vertically integrated solution. But yeah, I mean, stuff like that seems like there should be, I mean, you should be able to discover a product via MCP where you are trying to do something and it's like, this tool exists. I can go pay for it.
It's almost like there needs to be like an Amazon.com for pieces of a development, an application, and services of an application that agents can browse themselves, has enough information for them to make good choices, and then has like a packaging that allows an agent to sign up, etc. Like, it's going to break down a lot of things, because like typically the way you'd sign up is they want your email address, and then they want to confirm your email address to make sure they really have something that they can market to in the future. But I think all that goes away at some point.
Yeah.
Like, why am I going to see marketing? Why do you really need my IP address or my email address? You know, why do I need to verify my email address? Like, there needs to be a new concept for like, hey, I told an agent to do something. It decided to use your product. It might ask me whether I want to pay for it. And I want the agent to be able to do that end to end. If you're going to ask me for an email address that I have to verify, and I got to put in my credit card details in some sort of form on your website, that's at some point going to be a bridge too far for you.
Yeah.
You're going to be like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
And the agents can evaluate if there's multiple players in the marketplace. The agents can do that evaluation and decide maybe there's a human in the loop somewhere. But like if there's 7 or 8 different competitors, let the agent decide which is the best one that's going to solve my problem right now. Let me go and evaluate the API calls, the MCP calls. Let me go and run through the trials of using it. Don't non-paid version, it can figure out within a day or two like that it works or not, and it's going to solve whatever problem. And if it hits a bottleneck, it could leave and go and try some other product. Like, yeah, to me that should be how I think that's the biggest gap in the next place where AI needs to kind of evolve in how people sell and buy.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's necessary, because if you truly want to get rid of every human in the process and have it be a self-improving flywheel, you got to realize that like the current state of software engineering is that the tickets are not, they're not ready for an agent. Even in the best tickets, they all contain like little spikes or research projects that the engineers got to go in, build versus buy analysis across a number of different products. It's not something an agent always gets to that and then hands it off to you, and you have to go do that part. And that's the part that has to be solved, I think.
Yeah,
comprehensively.
Yeah, for sure. And I wonder if, since we talked about the most popular videos, if then those also become more popular. See? I don't know.
I figured out a flywheel.
Anyway, everybody, thanks for joining us, and congratulations, Dustin, on 1 year before the commit. I didn't think we would make it to a year, and here's to year 2. Take care, everyone.
Take care.